The Slow Unraveling of Truth, How Lies Tear at the Fab by Oct. 28th, 2025. The Slow Unraveling of Truth, How Lies Tear at the Fabric of Reality. Somewhere around the midpoint of life, I arrived at a conclusion that felt less like an insight and more like a revelation. Lies don't just distort perception, they rip holes in reality itself. The idea seemed abstract at first, perhaps even romantic in its moral simplicity. But as time went on, as the world turned digital and truth became optional, the evidence began to shout all around me. The world frays where honesty fails. Human society is built upon invisible threads of shared understanding. Every word spoken, every promise made, every social contract ever written hinges on one basic presupposition, that what we say has at least some relationship to what is real. When that relationship breaks, even slightly, it destabilizes everything connected to it. A lie is not just an ethical failure, it's an act of entropy. It injects confusion, fracturing coherence, corroding trust, and ultimately unraveling meaning. Now, in the age of the internet and artificial intelligence, lies no longer just travel, they replicate. The once quiet moral problem of deceit has become a full-scale metaphysical breakdown. Deepfakes rewrite history in real time. Chatbots and influencers project simulations of humanity more convincing than many humans themselves. Every feed scroll is a slow slide through competing realities, each insisting on its own truth. The fabric of consensus thins, the shared dream of humanity flickers. We often imagine the apocalypse as a loud event, an explosive end. But maybe the true ending comes quietly, through the slow disintegration of sincerity. Integrity used to be a cultural virtue. Now it's an aesthetic choice. Deceit has become not only tolerated but monetized. Each distortion, each manipulated narrative, each AI-generated illusion carries a metaphysical cost. A world saturated in falsehood loses the depth of its human experience, as if our souls are going offline one by one. Perhaps the essence of being human lies in that delicate alignment between inner authenticity and outer expression. When those two layers separate, when we cease to mean what we say or believe what we see, the world itself grows thinner. Lies tear the fabric of reality because reality is at its core a shared act of faith. It depends on the fragile weave of trust that says, I see you, you see me, and what we say matters. Without that, the universe doesn't end, it just stops making sense. And maybe that's worse. The Unraveling, How Lies Tear the Fabric of Reality and Diminish the Human Soul. I arrived at this conviction not through study but by lived experience. Lies are not mere moral errors, nor incidental distortions, but actions with metaphysical consequences. They rip at the very fabric that holds our reality together. With one, the slow unraveling of truth. How lies tear at the fabric. Oct. 28, 2025. Every serious betrayal I suffered, each time I caught myself in even minor self-delusion, I noticed the world felt a little less substantial, a little less meaningful, like colours faded and clarity receded. That sensation lingered quietly in the margins of my thinking for years. Now, as we careen through a digital age awash in artifice, that original insight has grown into an urgent philosophical warning. What happens to a world when honesty ceases to be a default assumption? What becomes of humanity when deception is not just common, but incentivized and hyper-amplified by our most powerful technologies? It's not just relationships or politics that are at stake, it is reality itself, and with it, the fullness of human experience. Lies as ontological violence. Consider for a moment, reality is not just the sum total of what exists, but a delicate consensus of what we agree is true. That consensus is not static, it's woven minute by minute through human dialogue, through stories passed down, through the agreements and rituals of daily life. These shared fictions, money, marriage, law, and language, are sustained by a tacit commitment to something like truth. When lies enter this ecosystem, they are acts of ontological violence. They don't merely mislead another mind, they vandalize the shared tapestry. Each untruth is an introduction of contradiction, a creation of noise in the signal, a deliberate mist over a landscape others must walk through. Even so-called harmless lies dilute the clarity of what is shared, making reality a less reliable place for everyone. If that sounds dramatic, consider how trust functions in day-to-day life. You trust that the food you buy was honestly made. You trust that your partner's words map onto their feelings. You trust that the news reports what happened, not what someone wishes happened. Each time that trust is broken, not only does some specific relationship degrade, but your underlying confidence in the world itself is diminished. The colours drain, the texture flattens. Worse, the faculty for genuine human connection, the one uniquely human gift, is battered in the process. The Internet, exponential entropy engine. With the rise of the Internet, the entropic effects of lies multiplied overnight. Information, true or false, now moves faster than thought. Rumours become realities by mere repetition. Whole industries are devoted to manipulating perception for profit or power. If once lies were droplets, now they are tsunamis, surging through social feeds, algorithmic suggestion loops, and filter bubbles. Technology, ideally, could have fostered a new era of enlightenment, making knowledge more accessible, making every lie easier to pierce. Instead, we see something more chaotic and subtle. The tools built to connect us become vectors for division. The more information is available, the more easily noise drowns out signal. By the time a correction fact-checks a viral falsehood, the damage is done, the thread is snapped, and no amount of stitching will restore it fully. To the Slow Unraveling of Truth, How Lies Tear at the Faber by Oct. 28, 2025, AI and the Death of Consensus Reality. Artificial intelligence has pushed these trends to their existential edge. Reality is now easily synthesized, faked, or endlessly revised. Deepfake videos cast historical events in new, absurd lights, and entire social movements can be manufactured from bot armies. We are surrounded by machine-generated words and images that appear more real than what actually happened. Authenticity itself is under siege. AI language models, as brilliant as they may be, are built on patterns in data. Patterns shaped by human minds, but equally shaped by human biases, illusions, and falsehoods. The looping effect is dizzying. Humans lie, algorithms learn from those lies, and the next generation of lies becomes harder to detect, more seductive in their apparent coherence. The result is that consensus reality, the shared ground on which we all stand, begins to dissolve. Where once we negotiated fact from fiction together, now we retreat into parallel universes, each with its own curated mythology, its own gaslit history, its own moral logic. Every time one of these bubbles bursts, the enduring feeling is not just disappointment, but a vertiginous sense of unreality. If what I believed was a lie, what can I trust? Integrity as metaphysical resistance. In the face of this vast erosion, integrity isn't just a moral stance, it's an act of metaphysical resistance. To be honest is to reassert the reality principle, to refuse participation in the collective hallucination. It is to say, directly or indirectly, I refuse to make the world hazier for others. I will stand in truth even when it costs me, because the alternative is a world where nothing and no one can be relied upon. But this is not easy, and it's never been less fashionable. Integrity does not trend. Sincerity rarely goes viral. The dopamine loops of digital life reward performance over substance, confidence over competence, novelty over truth. Our economy and culture now run on manufactured storylines, on cleverly constructed simulations, on the hyper-real masquerading as the real. When authenticity becomes indistinguishable from its clever imitators, even those who long for real connection can forget what it feels like, and yet the longing persists. We sense intuitively when truth is in the room. It feels like a deep breath, a lifting of fog, a sudden return to colour and dimensionality. Art that speaks the truth shocks us with its simplicity. Relationships rooted in honesty are as nourishing as rain. The consequences: spiritual alienation. The psychic toll of this unraveling is visible everywhere. Anxiety and isolation multiply, even as we become more connected in the shallowest sense. The epidemic of loneliness in advanced societies is not just a social problem, but an existential one. So many of us feel cast adrift because the anchors of trust have been loosened or severed. When so much around us is staged, spun, sponsored, or algorithmically sculpted, we lose our grip on the rudder that guides us through the world. Perhaps worst of all, we start lying to ourselves about who we are, about what matters, about the reality of our own pain or joy. Internalized dis to the slow unraveling of truth, how lies tear at the Faber. Oct. 28, 2025, honesty is the final unraveling. When the division between inner and outer truth grows too wide, the psyche fragments. Depression, depersonalization, and nihilism become commonplace. The fading of our human experience, then, is not an accident. It is the inevitable consequence of this culture of unreality. When lies scale, meaning shrinks. The only antidote is courage, the courage to seek, speak, and stand by what is true, and to surround ourselves with those who value reality over illusion, rekindling reality. So where do we go from here? There is no going back to a pre-digital world, no uninventing the tools of illusion. But we can choose how we participate in this strange, unraveling moment. We can cultivate in ourselves and in our communities the deep discipline of honesty. Refusing to forward the meme we know is false, speaking up against deception, even when it hurts. Owning up to mistakes and making amends. Consuming less, reflecting more. True, these are small acts in the face of a tidal wave. But reality, I believe, is not lost all at once. It returns filament by filament, in every act of integrity, every refusal to yield to cynicism, every honest conversation that rebuilds a sliver of trust. To be honest, in a world frayed by lies, is as radical an act as there is. The stakes are nothing less than the depth and richness of the human soul, and the survival of meaning itself. Lies may be overwhelming, but the truth, once spoken, shines like a torch in the dark. It is up to each of us to keep the light alive, one small spark of reality at a time. 4.